Welcome to this fight scene analysis. Today we're going to be looking at the fight scene in the Fellowship of the Ring between Aragorn and the Uruk-hai leader that kills Boromir. So we're going to analyze every move, see if they're realistic, if they're historically correct or logic, and so on. So let's get started straight away. So we have the Uruk-hai leader here, ready to shoot another arrow at Boromir. So he doesn't really have any particularly good armor. He has some kind of soft leather, potentially void leather cuirass. So this armor would probably not protect very well against a proper sword strike, but could protect him against some minor hits. He does not have a helmet, so it's actually quite common in movies that important characters do not have helmets, and this is usually done so that, first of all, we can recognize the important characters. If everyone was just wearing a helmet, no one would be able to recognize them, which would be a problem. And so that we can see their facial expressions during a fight, see if they're angry, scared, or whatever they are. So it is not usually very realistic that those characters aren't wearing helmets, because a helmet is a very important part of your armor, because your head is the most important thing to protect. However, there are two things here that are quite important. First of all, this is the Uruk-hai leader, which wasn't necessarily supposed to fight. He was just there basically to be a leader for the rest of the group, and since he didn't necessarily need to fight, he doesn't need a helmet because he won't be attacked. The second thing is that he is mainly an archer, so he's using a bow as his primary weapon. Now, when you're using a bow, having a helmet can actually be a little bit problematic because it impairs your vision a lot. So basically, because of all the metal you have around your eyes, you won't be able to see that well up down to the sides, which can be a problem when you're trying to shoot your bow. So the fact that he's an archer and does not have a helmet is actually quite realistic. So he doesn't have a helmet, it's actually quite realistic. So Aragorn takes the Uruk-hai completely by surprise and decides to jump on him to push him away from Boromir so that he can't shoot an arrow at him. So Aragorn took the Uruk-hai completely by surprise. Uruk-hai had no idea he was coming. So the fact that Aragorn decides to just run straight at him to push him down is actually not the best move Aragorn could have done, because since he was taking it all completely by surprise, he could literally just have taken his sword and just attacked the Uruk-hai and potentially just finished him in one blow, and the fight would be over. Now, of course, they're not doing this in the movie because they want to have a fight scene, but in actual fact, if he could surprise Orc, he would just have killed him in one blow directly without even bothering to push him away. So, if you just pause right here, we can see that the Uruk-hai is immediately picking up a sword and a shield. Of course, it is logic that he wants to try to do this, because he is clearly going to have to fight Aragorn in melee. So he's picking up a strapped shield by the front strap. So a strapped shield is usually strapped to your arm, which means that it's basically attached. So picking it up just from the ground to just immediately fight with it is actually quite hard because, well, you gotta strap it to your arm. What he does here is just simply picking it up by the front strap and not attaching it to his arm. So this is perfectly possible to do. It just means that he won't be able to hold his shield as well as he would have been otherwise. So, of course, this is something you can do, but it's quite important to remember for later that he's not holding his shield properly. So, here he just goes straight for an attack at Aragorn, which Aragorn parries. Now, there is something quite interesting you may notice here, and that is the fact that if we look at the direction of his arm here, it's completely offline. It's basically not going to hit Aragorn at all. So his arm is here, and Aragorn's over here. So if just Aragorn did not parry the attack, the Uruk-hai would just have chopped through the air and done nothing, and Aragorn could just have followed up with another attack. And it's the same thing with Aragorn's attack. So, of course, the Uruk-hai is a little bit out of frame here, but it doesn't seem like Aragorn would have hit the Uruk-hai. Because we can see the sword here, it seems to be completely over the head of the Uruk-hai, which is approximately here. So he would probably not have hit anything. Now this is a quite common thing in fight scenes, where they just try to hit each other's swords instead of each other. And this is obviously done for the safety of the actors, because if they were actually chopping at each other, it would be dangerous, even though the swords are blunt. But it's something quite common, and well, of course, something you wouldn't have in a real fight. Now, one important thing to notice here is that the Uruk-hai, it's unclear if he wants to attack Aragorn or if he wants to parry the attack. But what he should probably have done, if he wanted to parry, was to use his shield to parry and use his sword to attack at somewhere else, for example, around the waist of Aragorn, right here now. So probably here he went for an attack, not a parry, and therefore he used his sword. And in addition to that, we saw just earlier that he wasn't holding his shield properly, so we could imagine that he hasn't yet got the hold of it properly, so he isn't really comfortable with using it yet, so therefore he uses his sword. So they both immediately go into what we call a bind. Now a bind is when the two opponents in a fight have their swords stuck together, and their swords are basically against the other one's sword, so they cannot really do any proper attack. Now usually in movies, and including here, they are trying to push at each other's blade instead of doing something else. Now if I take this sword here, and this one, if this is the bind, this is Aragorn's sword, this is the Uruk-hai, there is something Aragorn can do here, and that is, instead of trying to push away the Uruk-hai sword, he could just simply do this. So basically just tilting his sword around to hit the Uruk-hai in the head, while still parrying because he has a guard on his sword. So he could use a guard to still parry the attack of the Uruk-hai, but attacking him in the head, right, like this, and actually get hit without being hit because he's using his crossguard to parry. For the Uruk-hai, it's a little bit more complicated because he does not have a guard, so really doing anything isn't really that easy for him. If he tried to do the same, he would basically get Aragorn's sword straight in the hand. So it wouldn't necessarily be a very good thing for him to do that. But Aragorn definitely can attack like this. But instead he just tries to push it backwards. Now we can see that on the clip here that the blade of the Uruk-hai is right up at the crossguard of Aragorn's sword. And Aragorn seems to have his blade a little bit further up the blade of the Uruk-hai's sword. Now, if they were going to try to push, which they are doing now, Aragorn would definitely have the advantage here, because he's having the Uruk-hai's sword much closer to his hand, which means that he has way more power. If the Uruk-hai sword was up here, it would be much harder for him to push back than if it was down here. The Uruk-hai, on the other hand, actually has quite a disadvantage here, because Aragorn's sword seems to be quite high on his blade. So pushing on there would be much harder than if the blade was down here. Not only that, but Aragorn is holding his sword in two hands. Okay, so he has double the power for pushing, while the Uruk-hai is only holding it in one hand. So here Aragorn definitely has an advantage if they were going to try to push each other, which they shouldn't do, but that's what they're doing. What they should do really is Aragorn should just go for an attack with his sword like this. what the Uruk-hai should do, as I said, doing something with his sword is quite complicated because he doesn't have a god. So Aragorn can just slide his sword down to his hand and actually cut it off. But what he can do is something with his shield, okay? So he has a shield, we've seen him pick it up, and he could actually, while he parries with this hand, he could actually use his shield to stab in the gut of Aragorn. And Uruk-hai's shield have spikes on the front, so it would actually be a real problematic for Aragorn if he was shield bash with this shield. So definitely the Uruk-hai should just continue the parry here, maybe not try to do anything from the bind because he doesn't have a guard, quite risky, but just stab him with his shield, which would do a lot of damage, especially because Aragorn is not wearing any kind of armor. So the Uruk-hai does manage to push back Aragorn, even though he's only using one hand. This is, I would say, quite unrealistic. Aragorn definitely had an advantage here, but then you could say that it's an Uruk-hai, maybe he's stronger than a human, so, you know, okay, maybe. So, Aragorn gets pushed back into a tree, and we can see the handle of the sword up here, so he clearly lost his sword. So now he's actually disarmed and has been pushed back. So, the Uruk-hai tries to throw his shield at Aragorn. Now, so he has a strapped shield. A strapped shield usually is strapped to his arm, so usually he wouldn't have been able to throw it at all. As we saw previously, he actually does not have it strapped to his arm. He has actually picked it up just from the front handle. So, you know, the fact that he can just throw it is actually possible. He could do that because he's only holding it from the front handle. Doesn't mean that throwing a shield is a good idea though, because a shield would not fly straight. It would basically just get caught by the wind and just fly away. So, and it's too heavy to be thrown, but somehow he manages it. And the interesting thing here is that Aragorn still holds his sword here. You can see it here. I pointed out that he lost it. Now he has it. I don't know. Just the magic of movies, I guess. So, anyways, what I find very weird here is that the Uruk-hai is very, very far away from Aragorn, and the only reason why there's any distance between them is because he pushed him backwards. And I really don't think that it would create such a distance between the two fighters just because one of them threw the other back. Now, of course, this is probably something they just chose to do in the movie because, well, he needed the distance to be able to throw the shield, but in reality he wouldn't get such a distance. Aragorn is stuck in the tree. Now, he's stuck in the tree because the shield has two spikes that are attached to the tree on each side of his throat. For the Uruk-hai to be able to throw the shield with such force and be able to have it stand in the tree and hold Aragorn there, it would need an insane amount of force while still having an insane amount of precision to be able to actually hit his target correctly. So, extremely unlikely that he would be able to do that. So it's quite an unrealistic move. So, the Uruk-hai uses the shield to hold Aragorn onto the tree, and then uses his sword to, well, chop off the head of Aragorn. Now, Aragorn manages to get out, but he uses a lot of time to it, and it's like, I think that either he would be trapped because he would have it under his, it would have it on his neck and would basically be trapped, he wouldn't have any chance of getting out, or he would just be able to get out immediately. So the fact that he uses so much time, quite unrealistic in my opinion, but obviously done to create a little bit of suspense, like, oh no, he's trapped, what he's going to do, right? So Aragorn manages to get out and then punches the Uruk-hai in the belly. So, doesn't seem to have a lot of effect, and the Uruk-hai just pushes him away. Now, the kind of punch he did, I don't think he would have gotten a lot of force. It's like punch like that. I don't think he would have got a lot of force. And the Uruk-hai is wearing armor, even though it's only kind of some kind of soft leather armor. But he's still wearing armor, so I think it's correct that he wouldn't have been very affected by that punch. So he throws away Aragorn, and then when Aragorn is on the ground, he tries to chop at him. Probably the best thing you can do if someone is on the ground is to try to just hold them on the ground while still having your weapon, and then once you hold them on the ground, then you can use your weapon to attack them. But using your weapon directly, I mean, it's fine. It's probably not the best move you can do, but it's something you instinctively are going to do, so I don't mind it. So Aragorn ducks away and then hits the orc. And then he draws his dagger. So he stabs the dagger in the thigh of the orc. So punches him and just grabs him and throws him away. Nothing wrong with that exchange, just a basic hand-to-hand fighting, not anything very special. So he licks the dagger. There's no point in that, but yes, it's an orc and he just does weird stuff. So he throws Aragorn's dagger at Aragorn, and Aragorn parries it with his sword. Can someone explain me where Aragorn got his sword from? Because he didn't have it, and now suddenly he has it. I don't know. I mean, probably when he got thrown away, he lost his sword, and when he got thrown away by the orc, he landed beside the sword. He happened to just do that, and then he picked up the sword. Okay, maybe. It was lucky, but okay. So, parrying a dagger with a sword. It's not easy to do. It's possible, but it's not easy to do. He basically just takes a sword and just slaps the dagger away. Now, usually I would have said, not very realistic that he was able to do that. Now, I know that in the movie, when they made it, the actor of the Uruk-hai was supposed to throw the dagger towards Aragorn and just miss. But when they actually shot the clip, he missed on the miss and actually hit Aragorn without wanting it. So Aragorn actually had to parry it in reality, and he actually did that in reality. The actor of Aragorn actually just parried the dagger in the shot. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it happened, so they just thought, okay, you know what, that's cool, we keep it. So he was actually able to do it. I mean, if he was actually able to do it, it's possible. Picks up his sword and just attacks Aragorn. Now, it's hard to see, but I think that the attack would not have hit Aragorn at all. It seemed like it was purposefully aimed on the side of Aragorn, so Aragorn just parried it on the side, so that there wasn't any risk for the actors. It seemed like if this is Aragorn, he was slashing purposefully here, purposefully missing, not to hit Aragorn, not to hurt him. Of course, it's not something we do in a real fight, but you know, it's a movie that are doing it for safety. Okay, so we just had an exchange. There was nothing wrong with that exchange. So, right here, Aragorn chops off the arm of the Uruk-hai. So basically, the Uruk-hai has his sword to the side, and because he has that, Aragorn can just freely just chop off his arm. Nothing particularly wrong with it, except for the fact that if your enemy is so open, why do you hit at the arm? Why don't you just simply hit at the head? Right? So basically, he's completely open. You can choose wherever you want to hit, and he chooses to hit the arm. He could just simply hit the head and just cleave his head and killed him in one blow. So, quite unrealistic that he went for the arm there. So of course it's for the fight to continue afterwards, so we can see what's going to happen afterwards. But in reality, he should just have killed him in one blow there, straight in the head. Now there isn't anything very wrong about this, because I mean he's still chopping off his arm. It's not as if the Uruk-hai had full plate armor and no helmet, and Aragorn just decided, oh, I'm gonna go for the armor, and well, he just hit the armor when the head was completely open. At least he does chop off his arm. And you can also say that in the panic, he just did a quick slash and it happened to fall on the arm, even though maybe he wanted it to fall on the head. So, not anything particularly wrong, but he should just have hit him in the head. There should have been a reason for why he didn't. So, he goes straight after having chopped off his arm, he goes straight for a thrust in the belly. And then the Uruk-hai, with his arm that's not chopped off, grabs the blade and pushes it further in. Of course, not something you would have done in reality, but again, it's an Uruk-hai, they act in different ways, maybe they don't feel pain in such a way, I don't know. So it's not that unrealistic because it's an Uruk-hai. If it was a human, it would be absolutely unrealistic. They would just scream in pain, but it's an Uruk-hai. Now, if I'm a Uruk-hai now, he grabs the blade by the blade, okay, to push it in. So, grabbing it by the blade, you are going to cut your hand. But at this point, maybe he just does not care because he just has to get close to Aragorn to actually be able to do something. So he just can't care for his hand. What would be better if he did was to go for the guard, okay, and just pull with the guard to get close to Aragorn and then be able to do something. So if he went for the guard, he would not have cut his hand, and he would have had a better grip. Because, well, if Aragorn just pulls on the blade when he's holding onto the blade, when the Uruk-hai is holding onto the blade, well, because of the fact that it's a sharp blade, you're instinctively just going to let go of it. If you're holding on the guard, you have a much higher chance of actually being able to just hold firmly on it. And, well, the Uruk-hai is apparently very strong, managed to push back Aragorn in the bind. So, you know, if he held onto the crossguard, he could actually try to hold onto it, then maybe headbutt Aragorn, get him to lose his sword, and then he would hold the sword in crossguard. He could switch the handle, pull out the sword, and actually have Aragorn's sword. So he should have grabbed it by the crossguard, because now he has the problem that Aragorn can actually pretty easily pull on the sword, and he'll just get his hand cut and won't be able to hold it back. Anyways, let's see what happens. So he gets close into Aragorn, and Aragorn just pulls up the blade and chop off the Uruk-hai's head. Yeah, quite realistic. The only thing is that I don't really understand what the Uruk-hai was trying to do, because, okay, fine, getting closer, but if you're getting closer, you need to do it for a purpose. And the only purpose I could see here was to get so close that you would be able to do something like just let go of the blade, punch him, or headbutt him, something like that, in order for you to be able to make Aragorn let go of the sword and then pull it out. Then you have Aragorn that's able to just pull out the sword relatively easily. As I said, the Uruk-hai is holding the blade on the blade, so Aragorn would probably be able, with a good pull, to just pull it out. I think it would have been more believable if Aragorn gave the orc a headbutt, which would put the Uruk-hai off balance, and then just pull out the sword much more easily. I think that would have been more believable, but it's not bad now. Now, one last thing I forgot to mention was the fact that Aragorn just stabbed right through the armor of the Uruk-hai. So, very often in movies, armor just have no effect at all. Everything just goes right through, including now. However, the armor of the Uruk-hai was just soft leather, potentially hard leather, but probably only soft leather. So the fact that he was able to just stab through isn't that unrealistic, because it's only soft leather and it was a good thrust. So not that unrealistic. So anyways, that was the fight scene. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.